Retro Now.
Hey, this is Lauren Mary Kim, and I'm the stunt double for Ahsoka Tano in Clone Wars and the armorer in The Mandalorian. You're listening to Dennis and Jay on Podcast Stardust. This is the way.
Welcome to Podcast Stardust. This is the fully armed and operational podcast dedicated to Star Wars news, reviews, and discussion. I'm Dennis Keithley.
And I'm Jay Krebs.
And this episode will feature part one of our recap of the news coming out of Star Wars Celebration Japan. Jay, you want to go ahead and give everyone our social media contacts before we get started?
Absolutely. We are very easily and conveniently found on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust.
All right, the dish is lying, the signal is boosted to maximum output, the shield is down. We are now broadcasting to the galaxy. So we're going to start getting into some of the news that are coming out of Star Wars Celebration Japan with this episode, and then we will take a break to cover Andor on Monday before we get into the rest of the news on Wednesday. And we really should have done a bit more pre-planning because I have no idea exactly which stories we're going to talk about on this one, but we'll see how it goes.
It'll be fun.
Yeah, it'll be a voyage of discovery for all of us here. But Jay, before we get into that, you and I recorded the night before Celebration. That's not actually right. I mean, it was the day of Celebration when we were recording last, and we kind of talked about the breaking news about Star Wars Starfighter. But technically here, it was still Thursday while it was Friday in Japan, and everything was getting underway. Did you end up watching any Celebration after we recorded that night, or how did you take it in over the weekend?
That night I didn't. I was kind of looking through some of the Instagram posts and things that were coming out. But then over the weekend, talk about a voyage of discovery. It was just so weird because, of course, as you said, being in Japan, the time difference was, it was just getting started at 9 p.m. Well, Eastern time for me. And, and that's when the day was just getting started. So I was staying up a little bit to watch over the weekend for a few hours. And then, I was like, well, I'm going to go to bed and get up the next day and see what kind of news I have. So it was kind of fun to, get right back on Instagram the next morning and just start scrolling through to see what some of the highlights were. But then I was going back onto the YouTube channel for StarWars.com, and I was catching all of the panels that I could and the shorts and all the live stage interviews. And so, just trying to keep up with everything that way as I was cleaning my house or, doing whatever. So I really tried to drink in as much as I could, but I didn't get to see a whole lot of it actually live. But I know some people did stay up till the wee hours of the morning for certain panels, but I am just not that brave. I'm not that young anymore. So it was like, okay, I'll just find out about it in the morning. And I was fine with that. But what about you? What was your experience like?
Yeah, I would usually get in, other than that Thursday night when it was starting and we were recording, I would usually get in as it was start kicking off. And then I would watch for a few hours. And then, like you, it was like at some point, I just had to go to bed. And then the next morning, it was all over Instagram. There were YouTube clips all over the place. People sharing stuff. And so that was fun. Then, we had friends that were there. Ross Hollowman was down there from Album Cockpit Podcast. Daz Davies was there. And so they were sharing a lot of stuff, which was a lot of fun. A few other people as well. And Joel Welch, I can't remember. But there was a number of our friends that were there. And so that was fun, kind of keeping up with what they were doing and their perspective on the reveals and stuff and getting to see all their pictures. That was a great way of doing it. I mean, it was challenging keeping up with all the content over the weekend. And then I've been so busy since then. I've seen things that have gotten recirculated a few times, but I haven't been able to really go back into YouTube and watch all the panels necessarily. But been plenty of articles about it, diving into everything that's happening there. So it was fun. It was one thing when it was in London and you could get started in the late afternoon watching this stuff. But having it start at 8 o'clock my time, and then they would get through like that first major panel of the day, but you would still have stuff coming out later in the afternoon that
Mhm.
you just, no matter how much I wanted to stay up, it just wasn't happening at this
Oh,
day
for
and age.
sure.
And so, but then again, it was always fun the next morning waking up and seeing what came out. And I want to say, there was plenty of stuff that was announced. I don't think there was quite the volume of breaking news that we're used to coming out of
Mhm.
Celebration, but there was
Mhm.
still some pretty big things. The other thing I noticed was that they didn't have quite as large a celebrity presence at the celebration as what we've typically seen over the last several ones that have been in London, Orlando, Chicago, and Anaheim. And so they were relying on a lot of the same people to come back to that Celebration live stage over and over.
Yes.
Again, Ahmed Best was there every day. Rosario
Mhm.
Dawson, I think, was there all 3 days. Dave Filoni was constantly coming out to talk about stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then there was the traditional Anthony Carboni, Anthony Daniels showdown,
Oh, yeah.
which was fun.
Always, always.
Yeah.
And I was trying to keep my eyes peeled for, as you mentioned, we had several friends that had made the trip, and I didn't catch anybody on any of the, Star Wars live stages, or a lot of times when they're panning the audience, in different
Yeah.
panels and whatnot. But did you catch anybody?
Not while it was happening, but I know Ross posted a picture where he was in the background from the live stage. So
Oh, good.
yeah,
Okay.
it was cool to
Nice.
see.
I missed that one. Well, good for
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we get into this? We're going to probably jump around a bit, and because there's a lot to cover, and we're going to want to probably talk about it in some detail. So we'll get some of it knocked out here, and then we'll pick up with the rest of it on Wednesday. And of course, everything was kicked off on that Friday with the Mandalorian and Grogu panel, which featured the impromptu reveal of Star Wars Starfighter, um,
Yeah.
which was really, really unexpected. I know it was kind of a gripe that some people had that there was no panel that from the outside or on its face looked like it was designed to make any big reveals like that. And
Mhm.
so they
Mhm.
snuck it in there. And
They
so
sure did.
now we know better for celebrations going forward. But we covered this on the news as it happened last week. But again, there was things were kicking off, and then Sean Levy was brought out as a surprise guest, and he announced this Star Wars Starfighter that's coming out on Memorial Day of 2027. Will be set 5 years after the Rise of Skywalker. Production starts this fall, and it stars Ryan Gosling.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to necessarily redo the conversation we had last week, but I think it's just important to include in a show that's all about celebration reveals that was there.
Definitely, definitely, and very exciting, and, I don't know if you got a chance to catch the Star Wars live stage where, Sean Levy and Ryan Gosling came out and talked a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
about Starfighter and, just some of the things that we could expect, but that was a lot of fun as well to be able to see them take the time to do that.
Yeah, I'm super pumped for that movie.
Oh, yeah.
I'm excited for Mandalorian Grogu. I'm excited for that. It seems like maybe they're settling in to getting into a reliable production schedule. Knock on wood.
Mhm.
I mean, I've seen a lot of pushback on this, and I get it. We've had so many Star Wars movies announced, and this one wasn't officially announced until this celebration. I mean, we've heard about it from various sources like Variety and Entertainment Weekly and Deadspin, Hollywood Reporter, and stuff like that. This was coming, but they hadn't made any official announcement, and this just jumped the line. This and
It
Mandalorian
did.
Grogu jumped the line over everything that had been previously announced, including
Right.
the new Jedi Order movie and Dawn of the Jedi and the Taika Waititi movie, which they've said are still in development.
Yes, they
So,
did.
the
That's
notable
encouraging.
ones that's not in development on that list anymore is, of course, Ryan Johnson's movies. But
Mhm.
the Ryan Kinderberg's movies, they're still being listed as in development. And
Mhm.
if I had to guess, and this is just a guess, I'm beginning to wonder if that Ray movie doesn't get absorbed into whatever Kinberg is doing.
I could see that.
Yeah. Again,
Mhm.
it's one thing to be in development and it's another thing to be in production. And when
Right.
you're in development, that just means that it's something that is, again,
It's an
being developed.
idea.
It doesn't actually mean that's ever going to hit the screens. And I
Yes.
think that's kind of where Lucasfilm goes wrong with this, is that they let us know of everything in its development, not everything that gets approved for production. So
Mhm. Well, I wonder sometimes too if they do that just to test the waters a little bit, just to
yeah,
see what the fan base responds to and what people get excited about. But then again, that's not always the best temperature gauge for
No,
the,
it's not a
you
good
know,
idea to get up on stage and announce these things. It's one thing
right.
to leak it to one of those industry rags that we were talking about, but you get everyone all excited and putting it on their calendar when you get up on stage, and then when it never happens, there's justifiable pushback for that.
Mhm.
But you know what? We've had that conversation a lot. So let's talk about the rest of the Mandalorian and Grogu panel here.
Sounds good.
Featured Dave Filoni, Kathleen Kennedy, Jon Favreau, and Sigourney Weaver. Some of the things that we learned is that Zeb will be in this movie. You and I knew that from got to see the sizzle reel from the previous celebration. We got a little bit more on Sigourney Weaver's role. She is a New Republic X-Wing pilot that hires the Mandalorian to do a job. Sigourney Weaver admitted that she hadn't seen the Disney Plus series when she was first approached about this role, but it didn't take her long to become a fan. She said that when I watched The Mandalorian, I fell in love with all the characters, especially this guy. She's talking about Pedro. And of course, Grogu stole her heart. So they did show, I think, a clip / sizzle reel that they've shown in the past, which features Din Djarin breaking into an AT-AT, and then we get to see Grogu using his force powers to destroy a mouse droid and a well-muscled Hutt in an arena, which
Yeah.
is apparently Rhoda the Hutt. So,
Mhm.
what's your takeaway from all this?
Pedro Pascal is such a goof.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. His sense of style cracks me up always.
Oh my gosh, yes.
He's so funny. But so, I mean, this is one of the things that I was thinking about, though, was that we've been told so often that Brendan Wayne is basically going to be taking over the physical role of Din Djarin. And so it just makes me, wonder how much of Pedro we're actually going to see. But then there was that one promotional photo of him actually just standing there, kind of in that, almost hero pose, looking off into the distance with his helmet tucked underneath his arm. So, this is not the way he had his helmet off. But so it just kind of made me wonder that. So that was a takeaway for me. And then just the fact that Sigourney Weaver had said that, admittedly, she hadn't even seen The Mandalorian when she was first approached about the role, but that she became a fan instantly. So I thought
Yeah.
that that was, a lot of fun. I mean, how could you not? And of course, like you said, you pointed out that she was so in love with Grogu, and then Grogu comes out on stage and once again steals everyone's heart, of course. So, that was pretty cool. And getting to see her in the X-Wing pilot jumpsuit, the orange jumpsuit, was really awesome as well. So those were my big things. But what about you?
Well, there was also the behind the scenes image of Dave Filoni in the cockpit of the AT-AT, which was
Oh
kind of
yeah.
cool.
Oh yeah. That was very
Um, and back to what you were saying about Pedro, is I do know in one of his Star Wars Live stage appearances, he did credit Brendan Wayne and Lateef Crowder for being in the suit most of
good.
the time on that. But yeah, it looks like I'm guessing that they're giving him a salary that's commensurate with him actually being around for more of the production of this movie than when he's largely just doing the voice work when he's never taking off his helmet in a lot of these
Mhm.
episodes. So again, we'll see what happens with that.
Mhm.
But I'm pumped. I mean, this movie is still more than a year away, but
Yeah.
it's just so exciting that we've got principal photography is done. I don't know if they've got pickup shots to do or where they stand in all the special effects, but this is a movie that, at least in theory, they have everything they need to finish it and put it out in the theaters for us. And by the time this comes out, it will have been 6.5 years since we had a Star Wars movie in theaters. So uh,
Yeah.
that'll be very, very welcome indeed. A new movie, I should
So
say. Of course, we had the re-release of a bunch of movies recently.
yeah. So what just hit me though is that, and correct me if I'm wrong. So this is coming out May 27th, 2027.
26.
And oh, 26. Okay. So yeah, because I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, we have two movies coming out in the same weekend. No,
No, no.
they're a year apart.
Year
Okay.
apart. Yeah.
Whew. All these years are starting to run together with these movies. So okay, thank you. That's
Yeah,
right.
no
It is
problem.
next year.
All
Next
right. Yeah, they're 1 year behind the 10-year plan for starting
year.
blocks of movies. So All right. Well,
Hard.
let's move on because we've talked about a lot about Mandalorian and Grogu in the past. We had some surprising news during the 20th anniversary. I'm sorry, the panel celebrating the 20th anniversary of Star Wars animation or Lucasfilm animation. We got the news that there is of the new animated series, the next animated series, I should say, Maul Shadow Lord, which will be debuting
Yeah.
in 2026. Sam Witwer was a surprise guest, and he appeared to announce this at the panel. And they've described it as occurring about a year after the Clone Wars. Maul plots to rebuild his criminal syndicate on a planet that is heretofore untouched by the Empire. And they showed a sizzle reel that was not available to people watching from home or elsewhere at Celebration, which we got to see some stuff from. And if you don't want any spoilers on this, then you want to skip ahead probably a couple minutes on this. But some of the feature elements from that is that Maul will be facing off against an Inquisitor that looks an awful lot like Marok from
Mm-hmm.
Ahsoka. And he appears to have a Twi'lek apprentice, and she has red skin.
Yes.
So, what was your reaction to all that?
So I did do a little research into, I just like asked Google, is Marak in Maul Shadow Lord? And it said that yes, he's fighting this Inquisitor named Marak. So
Mhm.
according to Google, that is confirmed. But that's super cool. And then yes, this Twi'lek, this red Twi'lek, I know a lot of people are saying that this could potentially be like the Darth Talon.
Mhm.
She doesn't have the tattoos on her Leku like we've traditionally seen.
Mhm.
And admittedly, her red skin is a little bit more on the pinkish side, at least from what I could tell, but maybe that was just from the images that I saw too. But I think that's very exciting that if this is the case that they're pulling that out of those stories that so many of us know and love. And then, as Dave Filoni's always said, there's always and Ahsoka, there's always a bit of truth in legends.
Sure.
So that's pretty cool. And just
Well,
getting Sam Witwer back is just such a gift.
yeah, here's some thoughts on The Apprentice. Yeah, the skin might not be the bright red that matches Maul's face, the red that on
Mhm.
his face, or the Darth Talon that we're used to from the comics. But let's keep some things in mind. It looks like Maul is discovering her as an apprentice, so she wouldn't necessarily have the Sith tattoos yet.
Mhm.
Second, um, Darth Talon could be kind of scantily clad in the comics, which were aimed
Mhm.
at an older audience than things like the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch have been aimed at. So I could see them making some alterations to that character. Not everything is a one-to-one translation from Legends when it gets pulled into canon there. So there's that. Number 3, when you remember a few years ago when the news broke about George Lucas's idea for a sequel trilogy, and the villain was going to be Darth Maul, and his apprentice Darth Talon was getting
Mhm.
imported from Legends.
Mhm. I
I
do.
think that might be an influence on this. If that's something, you know, Dave studied at the feet of George when they were doing the Clone Wars, and that's how he learned everything he knows about Star Wars, or everything that George thought about Star Wars, I should say. So it stands to reason maybe they talked about this some at that time, and so this is an idea that George liked, and Dave is carrying it forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's exciting though. I mean, either way, it's all going to be amazing. I mean, we get a whole series with Darth
Mm-hmm.
Maul.
Mm-hmm.
It's so, so great. So, there was another thing too that I saw, and I don't know how true this is, that there was some rumors that Kylo Ren was going to be part of this series potentially. Had you heard anything about that?
No, but I don't know how that would even be possible.
I know. That's what I was thinking too. There was some, different kinds of like smatterings on the web of different things. And I thought, I don't know how that would actually happen, but that's why I wanted to wait and talk to you about it and see what your thoughts were.
I mean, I guess nothing's impossible, but I don't get it if that's the case. I mean,
Mhm.
this is Kylo's parents are one at the time of this,
Mhm.
or his mother is one at the time of this, and his dad would have been what, an early teenager, in his early teens
Mhm.
at the time. So
Mhm.
it would involve some sort of time travel or something like that to make that work. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
I
what I
just
was
don't.
thinking too, unless there's
Yeah,
some tie somehow to Kylo Ren, you know what I mean? But I
I
don't
just
even know what that would be. So,
yeah, yeah. I don't know either. Hmm.
at any
Okay.
rate.
Yeah. Well, there is some Kylo Ren news that will come up later, that either in this episode or the next one we do on the news.
Ooh,
Okay, well, moving on. So we have that to look forward to in 2026 on Disney Plus.
yes.
We knew this was coming, but they dropped Light and Magic season 2 the week of Celebration, so it is out there. They've got 3 new episodes. It picks up in the mid 1990s after Jurassic Park, and they are kind of touting how the innovations that were there that we got to see in season 1 of Light and Magic led to what we got to see in the prequel trilogy, and some of the behind the scenes images that we've seen show them the storyboards and all the type of stuff that they were doing for the prequel trilogy. So that's exciting. That's something that we will be talking on and off about over the next month and a half because we have so much
Mhm.
to cover in May.
We do
Uh,
indeed.
yeah, we were just scheduling this all out, and I was surprised we were able to fit everything in, but we did. So yeah, but yeah, if you want to check that out, it's available to you now. All 3 episodes on Disney Plus, and yeah, we'll probably be talking about that more in the weeks and months ahead.
Yes, for sure. I'm excited to get into it. I have not yet.
Hmm. Well, let's skip ahead to some. There's more television news, but we will come back to that next week. Let's skip ahead to some of the publishing news. Now, right before Celebration, they dropped a whole lot of news about books that were coming out, including Adam Christopher's book about Darth Vader and some other reveals about the stuff that's going to be happening at the end of the High Republic, which is this summer. But then they saved a few things for Star Wars Celebration, and let's go through that. So, in attendance at the publishing panel were Adam Christopher, Tessa Gratton, who's worked on Star Wars: The High Republic, most notably Temptation of the Force, Mike Guggenheim, who's worked on comics such as Han Solo and Chewbacca, Lydia Kang, also from The High Republic, she wrote Cataclysm, Ethan Sachs, who has done work in Star Wars comics, Phil Shostak, who did the art of Star Wars: The Mandalorian, Alessa Wong, who is known for Dr. Aphra, Dr. Chris Kimshall, who's done the Rise and Fall of the Galactic Empire, which is kind of that in-universe look at the Empire, and then Marvel's editor-in-chief C.B. Cebulski. We're there to share the news. Up first, we have a announcement of a new miniseries coming from Kevin Scott that is called Star Wars: The High Republic: Fear of the Jedi, and I guess this is what is going to actually end up putting a bow on the High Republic, kind of
Oh,
after the
not what we
conclusion.
thought. Okay.
Yeah, the Charles Soule's final novel is kind of the resolution, I think, of everything. But this, I guess, is kind of an epilogue, is the way I'm understanding it. But
Okay.
we've been enjoying his other work, so I am
Oh,
not
yeah,
against getting more High Republic comics from Kevin Scott.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Always a pleasure.
All right. And then we knew we had a book about Jecki and Yord from The Acolyte coming this summer. We now know it'll be released on July 29th. The title will be The Crystal Crown. And we got a look at the cover with Jecki and Yord igniting their lightsabers and kind of staring at somebody that's off. That's not there on the page, but looks good. Looking
It
forward to that.
does. Yep.
Yeah.
Purple
This
background.
next one really intrigued me. We've talked in the past about how Charles Soule is working on a comic series called Legacy of Vader that's about Kylo Ren in between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. Well, there is another Ren character named Tava Ren who is supposed to be an Order 66 survivor, and we got to see some concept art of her.
Yeah.
I am very intrigued by that.
Yes, I am as well. And, we've always talked about the Knights of Ren just in general have been so mysterious and in their origins. And we've gotten some of that obviously throughout, the course of canon and comics and whatnot. But
Mhm.
I mean, this is super exciting. I mean, just
Yeah.
to be able to see this leaping off the page. And
Right.
of course, I'm already thinking, cosplay.
Right. And we got to see Kylo defeat the Ren in the comics.
Mhm.
That two-parter that Charles Soule wrote, which the name escapes me at the moment. It took place before The Force Awakens. So yeah, it's really exciting that he's continuing that story because he did such a good
Mm.
job with
Oh,
that
for
and his
sure.
treatment of Ben Solo / Kylo Ren.
And these covers are amazing.
And then, of course, Ahmed Best is everywhere, including the publishing panel, and that is because
He
Kellerman
is.
Beck is going to be featured in issue 8 of Star Wars Jedi Knights. And now that's kind of the series. It's a prequel to the Phantom Menace, and the issues seem to follow a different Jedi Knight on an issue by issue basis. So he's getting his props as Kellerman Beck in issue 8, and so we got to see some cover previews for that.
That's so cool. I'm so
Yeah.
happy for him.
hmm And then there is a whole lot of Star Wars manga coming. We know there is a manga adaptation of A New Hope, one for Timothy Zahn's Thrawn novel, another for Fallen Order, an adaptation of that video game, and then what appears to be a new series called Path of the Lightsaber, which is a sequel trilogy era story. Um, I gotta admit, manga's a mixed bag for me. There's certain
Mhm.
art styles that I like, and there's some that are just a little too cute. And a lot of the art I saw for these mangas kind of fell into that later category. And
Mhm.
so I wasn't quite as excited for those. But what was your reaction?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I do like I think out of all of them, the Thrawn cover looks probably the most appetizing, if you will, to me.
hmm
But I mean, the Jedi Fallen Order one is also pretty cool, but it like you said, it's a little bit on that cutesy side, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's what manga is,
hmm
and so it'll be one of those things where I think if and when we pick these up, it'll be more for the completist aspect of things and just out of that satisfying the curiosity more than anything. And not that I won't appreciate it because I'm sure I will, but is it something that I feel like is absolutely necessary to add to my collection? Probably not.
Yeah. I mean, I really like the Edge of Balance, the High Republic manga
Yeah.
series they've been doing, and
Hmm.
that's been fantastic. And I think it is on that fine line you're talking about between the kind of, I mean, edgy versus cute. It's somewhere between those two, I suppose, and that works for me. But I don't know. I know there's terms for describing different manga art styles, and I ask for everyone's forgiveness because I don't know what they are, but they almost kind of look like dolls a lot of the time in this art that I'm seeing,
Right.
and that's just not my preference. So,
Right, right. I am intrigued though, I will say, like I said, with the Thrawn, is that they have variations of Thrawn throughout his lifespan
hmm
represented, which I think is really intriguing, as far as that goes. And it's fun to flip through the different pages on StarWars.com because you can get, quite a bit of
yeah.
those pages for each one of the manga if you want a little bit more of your appetite to be satisfied for that.
Well, what I really want is a comic series about the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy that
Mhm.
gives us a look at all the different aliens and the different ships that were in
Yes.
there. Because
Yeah.
although Zahn did a pretty good job of describing things, it left a lot to the imagination. And that's fine. I mean, a lot of reading is that, but Star Wars is a very visual medium. And so
Right.
I want to know what I'm looking at or what's being described to me in that. And so I've been holding out for that. And hopefully we'll get around to doing that someday. We'll
Mhm.
see.
Yeah,
They've
and we've
adopted some
said
of the
that
other books that way, so we'll see.
right. We've said that so often, like, "Give us the pictures, we wanna see."
Yeah, and that was the other thing that was surprising is that Marvel did a Thrawn comic. So, I mean, it doesn't preclude them from doing a manga, but I was a little surprised they didn't adapt a different story, I suppose.
Mhm. Yeah.
But Thrawn's so popular, I suppose that's the reason. That's all they needed.
True.
Okay, let's hit just a couple more stories here before we wrap it up because this is already starting to go on the verge of being long. Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. And now we've been getting some hints about this for quite a while, but we got more details about the new mission coming to Smuggler's Run. And that is, it's going to be, well, let me rephrase, they gave us a lot more details on how it's going to work. And they're basically saying it's up to you and your crew to see this new mission through. Hondo Ohnaka has struck a deal with the New Republic to seek out ex-Imperial officers in exchange for a generous bounty. Hondo has enlisted the help of Mando and Grogu, and together you will team up and get your cut of the bounty. Which, okay, that sounds like a pretty cool way of doing it. I was wondering how they were going to work this in with Hondo. But then they go on to say, engineers now get more tasks. Okay, that's awesome. Because
That's good. Yes.
if you've done the engineer role on Galaxy's Edge, you don't have a whole lot to do. You sit in the back and you kind of look over everyone's shoulders and then you press a button a couple times. And that's about it. And on the one hand, that's great for people who don't want to actively fly and they just want to sit back and enjoy the ride. On the other, if you're not one of those people and you get stuck in that role, it can be disappointing after you wait for 45 minutes for your turn.
Right.
But so anyways, you get to choose which planet you go to next. That's cool. And so one, you're getting options, and two, you get to interact with Grogu back there. This went from being like kind of an also ran to probably one of the more desirable spots on the Millennium Falcon if you get to interact with Grogu.
Yeah, and it's really cool. Once again, on StarWars.com, they have a lot of the concept art from this, and you can flip through it. And it's so awesome to see all the different things that you can do and, fly through that are new.
Right. And so some of these new planets that you can go to or choose to go to include Bespin, Endor, and Coruscant. And some of the things that you'll be able to see include the wreckage of the second Death Star, a sandcrawler in Tatooine, and the Cloud City hangar bay. Now, we've talked about some of that in previous episodes, but it was interesting because you don't get that much choice when you're doing Smuggler's Run right now. You're tasked with getting some coaxium, stealing it from a ship, and helping Hondo retrieve it. And then you kind of just follow a prearranged flight pattern and jump to hyperspace when you need to and shoot at things when you need to. And that's the end of it. But now it's much more of a choose your own adventure type of a thing from the sounds of it.
Right, it really is, which I guess is both a blessing and a curse, because if you're one of those kind of people that looks for mastery and you want to do, the same experience over and over again, I suppose you could just choose the same experience over and over again. But this way you do have a lot more variety. And so, I mean, obviously for those that, especially if you have a pass to Disney and you're doing this a lot, once you've done Smuggler's Run so many times, it's like, yeah, it's great to be able to master it. But then again, it probably does get, I hate to say boring, but for some people that have done it so often, but this really does give a lot more of that choice to be able to do a lot of different things.
Yeah, they've definitely scaled up the rewritability by giving you those options, much the way they've done Star Tours by adding new scenes and different combinations of scenes along the way. So it looks like you'll have more opportunities for surprises. And once they integrate that, the sky is the limit. They can keep adding new stuff if they want to. So I think it's a very positive development. All right. Last story, and this is a big one, the one that we've been hoping to hear. They did announce the date and location of the next Star Wars celebration. Jay, I'll let you do the honors. Tell us when and where.
Oh, I'm so excited. So the next Star Wars celebration in 2027 will be taking place April 1st through the 4th in Los Angeles, California at the Los Angeles Convention Center.
Right. So obviously this will be celebrating the 50th anniversary of A New Hope. It's what we've been hoping for. I mean, I was kind of secretly hoping we get a celebration next year as well, because it's just been so long since I mean, I'm feeling a little spoiled saying that because I got to go to one 2017, 2019. Then of course, COVID canceled the 2020 celebration, but then we got it back in 2022. But it'll been 5 years since we've had American celebrations. We've had London and Japan in between there, and sure, put them overseas. That's great. But it's good to have one that will be in the States. I know there's some consternation that the last American celebration was on the West Coast and why didn't it come back to the East Coast or why didn't it come back to the Midwest? But hey, it is what it is. And this is doable. Japan, it's more doable than Japan. I know some people could get there. That just wasn't going to work with my schedule. So I know for certain that I'm going to get to see you again.
Yes.
If not beforehand, April 1st of 2027.
Right. No April Fools here.
Yeah. Because we got a lot of friends I just don't see outside of celebration. So this is great news. I cannot wait for this. I hope they blow it out the way they did in 2017 in Anaheim in Orlando for the 40th anniversary of A New Hope, with that big panel that has the likes of Mark Hamill and Harrison Ford, George Lucas, whoever's still around at that point. I mean,
right.
all of our heroes are getting older, and this movie was 50 years ago. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
crazy to think
I
about.
know, it really is, and it proves that Star Wars is forever too. It really does. And
Yeah.
I know in our last news episode, I had shared that my first celebration was in Los Angeles in 2007. So
Hmm.
for me, this just makes so much sense to do the 50th anniversary in Los Angeles, kind of where, the Grauman's Chinese Theater is and where A New Hope kind of sort of started. And yeah, and getting it back for that milestone anniversary. Oh, I'm so here for it. But we
Yeah.
gotta figure out a way to see each other before 2027. We have to make it so, somehow.
Yeah, I hear you. There'll be other cons, and maybe we can figure out one to get to, but we'll see what happens on that front. But that'll take some planning. But at least, like I said, if not sooner, we know April 1st through 4th,
Yes,
2027. We'll be there. Okay.
yes.
Woohoo. That was fun. And we got more news to cover, which we will get to on Wednesday's edition of the show. But we wanted to kind of hit some of the high points here before it got too much later. And as I said earlier, on Monday, we're going to get into our coverage of the first 3 episodes of Andor. But with that said, thank you for joining us for this episode of Podcast Stardust and our discussion of Celebration Star Wars Celebration Japan. We hope you enjoyed it. And if so, and you want to hear more about our thoughts, make sure you subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done so already. And once you've done that, we'd appreciate your ratings and reviews on whatever podcatchers that you use that support such things. If you want to find more episodes of the podcast beyond the last 1 or 200 that your podcatcher is likely to carry, one of the best places to do that is over on retrozap.com, where you can find the entire catalog of shows as well as some other great shows on the network. Be on the lookout. I know Love, Death, and Robots has got a new season that was recently announced, and so they'll be covering that over on Love, Death, and Robots Plus. Things are going strong over on Enjoy Stuff, as well as Jay and Josh's other shows like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Case Files and Superhero Suite. Jay, you want to remind everybody what our social media contacts are one more time and where else we can be found online?
You got it, Dennis. So you can always hit us up on Facebook and Instagram at Podcast Stardust. And we do have some Pinterest boards that you can check out. It has all kinds of fun things with everything Star Wars. And then we also have 2 different YouTube outlets. So you can check us out on YouTube, the traditional, as well as YouTube Music. And so those do support subscriptions as well as interactions and reviews. So please visit both of those and share those out with your friends as well. And then if you'd also like to further support the show, we do have a TeePublic store where you can order one of 7 different show logo designs that are available on everything from home goods and apparel and pretty much everything in between. So all you have to do to snag one of those is hit up the link in our show notes. And once again, every one of those purchases does help to support the show. And if you do happen to get something, please snap a picture and tag us because we have had a couple of sales and we just don't know who supported us. So we would love to see those out in the wild. It's always a great thing. So once again, hit up that link in our show notes.
All right. You want to remind everybody what you got coming up in cosplay?
Sure. So, as always, you can catch me on my Instagram very conveniently at j.snipscosplay. And I do have a couple of appearances coming up here in May in my relatively locally hometown in Cleveland area. So I have a Sweets and Geeks convention on May 10th. And then I also have a couple of things coming up at the very beginning of May around May 4th. Still finalizing a couple of details around those. So as soon as I get that, I will be sure to let everyone know. But until then, j.snipscosplay on Instagram.
All right. Upcoming on the show, I know I said this a couple times, but I'll just give it to you again as a final reminder. On Monday, we are discussing episodes 1 through 3 from season 2 of Andor. And then on Wednesday will be part 2 of our discussion of Star Wars Celebration Japan news. So make sure you join us for those. With that, thanks for listening to episode 878 of Podcast Stardust, everyone. Have a great weekend. And until next time, may the Force be with you.